I sometimes wonder, can I check if my glasses prescription is still up to date? Or even work out what a new prescription should be? When I was a student, I went for a free eye exam at the Waterloo School of Optometry, and after working out my prescription, the student optometrist stuck a bunch of lenses in a weird sort of glasses frame and got me to try that out to see if it was right. And I was thinking now, what would those be called? Maybe trial lenses? So I searched for that online and I bought this set off of Amazon, and at $210 Canadian, it wasn't overly expensive. So I got my eye chart here, and 20 feet from that, I got a little table set up with my trial lens kit. So let's try this out. So I'll start with the left eye because that's a little bit worse. And I'll start with minus half a diopter spherical. And that definitely makes it worse. Let's try positive half a diopter. And that definitely improves it. Let's try 3/4 positive. And that's worse. Let's try a 1/4 positive. That's about the same. So I'll go with a half a diopter positive. So I'll plug that into my trial lens frame here. And I'll block off the right eye with this thing here. And now let's check for astigmatism. So I'll go with a half a diopter cylindrical and turn that in front of my eyes. And like this actually looks pretty optimal for half a diopter. Now because I'm adding half a diopter here, I should really go half as far the opposite on the spherical. So I'm going to change that to 3/4 diopter in here for now. And let's try that again. Yeah, this is really good. But the question is this the optimal amount? Let's try a 1/4 diopter cylindrical, and I have to make sure I have these at the same angle. Yeah, half is definitely better. Let's try 3/4 versus this one. 3/4 is better. Let's try 1 diopter cylindrical, and always fine-tuning the angle here. And 3/4 is better. So I assume that is the amount of astigmatism that I need to compensate for it. So now I can just plug this into the frame here. And again, I'll tweak the angle on this. I'm going to fine tune the spherical again. So I have a plus 1/4 spherical and a minus 1/4 spherical. And I'll just try each one of these in front. No, this doesn't help any. And that makes it worse. So I could potentially go up a 1/4 on the spherical. Let's see. It's marginally better without, so I'll stick with a 3/4 positive spherical and the 3/4 negative cylindrical. And I'm not worried too much about getting the angle right because I can always just tweak it every time. It's really easy when you're doing it yourself, not like somebody keep asking you which is better, A or B. So now I need to do the same procedure on the other eye, so I'll just pull this out, put the blocking one in there, and do the same thing again. And in this case, a 1/4 plus does not improve. 1/4 minus makes it worse. Let's go for a cylindrical, half a diopter. Oh yeah, this angle works really good. So that's half a diopter, so I should really go positive half of that because that's not neutral in the spherical direction. And let's try that again. Oh yeah, that's nice. Let's try half of that, just a 1/4 diopter. Half is better. Let's try 3/4. 3/4 is marginally better. So I'll go with that. And now the question is, do I need to adjust the spherical? Got to tweak the angle again. But I can go up on the spherical a little bit. So I've got a 1/4 and a 1/4, so I'll put the half in here. And I think that's as good as I'm going to get. Oops. And that is nice and sharp now. So that's all it takes. Now, one more thing to make sure I got it right that I need to check is balance, which is to say that both eyes are focused at the same thing at the same time. And I can just do that by looking at the eye chart and putting my finger out in front of me and covering it with, I get two images of the finger as I look at the eye chart, covering it with one image of the finger and making sure behind it is sharp, and then the other. So if one of those is fuzzy behind the finger, so to say, then I know both eyes aren't focusing on the same thing at the same time. And if that's the case, although you may not notice right away, that can lead to quite a lot of eye strain, especially when reading. So now I can just read the labels off my little lenses. The cylindrical ones are both in there backwards, and if I flip them, that changes the alignment. But I've got on the right eye 0.5 positive and minus 0.75 cylindrical, left 0.75 plus minus 0.75. That's for distance. I still need to get the angle, and this trial frame has got a scale on here where these lines, you can read where that goes, and that would work if these things were actually in there on center, which they aren't because they don't fit quite in this thing because it's a real cheap trial frame. So I drew a protractor, and the angle basically goes from here to 180. So similar to mathematics, it goes counterclockwise. And these little lines on here indicate the angle. And so now for the right eye, that's this one here, I just have to figure out the line that lines up best with that while the frames are horizontal. And that appears to be the 30-degree line. So the angle for the right is 30 degrees. And for the left, we have, it's kind of between 140 and 130, so we'll call that 135. And those 6 numbers are essentially my glasses prescription for distance. Except being old as I am, I can no longer read the millimeter increments on calipers with a distance prescription, so I need a separate pair of glasses for close-up work. So let's try adding another positive 1.5 diopters to each eye. And the lenses keep falling out of this frame because it's a cheap one. And with that, I have no problem reading the vernier scale on my calipers this close, and it's clear at least as far as I can reach. And at 20 feet from my eye chart, I can read the first 2 lines and guess at the third, I think. And with my camera on manual focus, it has a slightly larger aperture than my pupil diameter, so a plus 1.25 lens produces about the same effect at a distance. But most of my woodworking is much closer, like this or closer. It's just further away, it's not as clear. But I need to see the stuff clearly that's closer, and it's much better this way than without. In fact, the glasses I've been wearing in pretty much all the videos I've shot over the last few years are 1.5 diopters over the prescription, because even if I don't need to read the calipers, I still need to fiddle with the camera. And things like reading the numbers off of these trial lenses is kind of guesswork for me without. Now, having worked out my own prescription, I was curious if I could do it for somebody else, and I found a willing guinea pig in my nearsighted friend Greg. And these are the numbers that I came up with, which actually was more trouble than I thought it would be. First of all, the astigmatism on here is much larger than I thought it would, and I kept adding more astigmatism. I thought, this can't be right. But it was right. But the tricky part here is beyond 1 diopter, this goes in 1 diopter increments. So for instance, to get 2.25 diopters, I have to stack a 2 diopter and a 1/4 diopter lens, and of course I have to make sure those are lined up properly with the lines. So that gets tricky. And then the spherical is also much larger. So for instance, 3.75 diopters, this kit only goes in 1/4 increments to 2, so to get 3.75, I need a 3 and 0.75, so I have to stack 2 for that. So that makes for 4 lenses, and I hadn't realized at the time that you could stick a lens in the back here as well. And there's only 3 slots in the front, so I was running out of positions, so I had to kind of hold another one in front to work that out. And then the next problem is this, I can't adjust the spacing on here, and with this being inaccurate as it is, the lenses just aren't in there in the center, so especially as I turn it, it moves around. And for larger prescriptions, being on center here is much more important than it is for a smaller prescription. So another thing that was suboptimal. So for larger prescriptions, it would certainly help to have better kit. Basically, smaller increments at larger diopters than I have, which means more lenses in the kit, and a much better quality set of trial frames. And what would also be very useful is something like a Jackson Cross cylinder lens, which allows you to test for astigmatism and increments of that without messing with a spherical, which would be much nicer if you're doing it to somebody else. If I'm doing it to myself, I don't need that so much. And after I stopped iterating between the cylindrical and the spherical, trying to get it just right, Greg went to look up his prescription that was just a few months old, and it's this. So we're fairly close. The angle is within 3 degrees. The cylinder, this one is the same. Here I'm within 1/4. This is within 1/4, but this one is half a diopter off. And also, these are the same here, and I have these different by 3/4 of a diopter. So this is clearly out of balance because I'm assuming this is much more accurate than what I've got here. Plus, I'm half a diopter off from here, so this is clearly an error on my part. And there's way more on this topic that I could talk about than I've covered in this video, but it's gotten quite long already. So we'll see how this video does, and I may make a whole lot more videos on this subject, which is a bit iffy because the subject is optometry, and I am not an optometrist, but some of the experiments and such I've done are kind of interesting.